Are you finding that your back is stiff and achy first thing in the morning? And when you wake up getting out of bed, it feels like it's hard to kind of straighten your spine all the way up until you move around a little bit? Or things like prolonged standing and walking causes generalized pain over your tailbone? And then with certain random movements, you get this kind of radiating pain down your leg that's dull and achy and makes you think you might have sciatica? Well, it turns out this condition is called lumbar facet syndrome, and it's often misdiagnosed. Therefore, people suffer from it unnecessarily and sometimes in a chronic capacity because they're given the wrong advice and treatments. For those that don't know me, my name is Dr. Zach Grimid here at Performance Sport and Spine in Seattle, Washington. In this video, we'll be discussing what this condition is, how to diagnose it, and then the best stretches and exercises to manage it all on your own. Let's start with the basics, our anatomy. So if we have our spine model, we have 22 bones that make up our spine called vertebrae. But we're going to be focused on the bottom 5, or your lumbar spine of your low back. Now these rest on this other bone called your sacrum, which is part of your pelvis. These elephant ears like bones are called your ilium. Now what we're focusing on are these joints in the back of your spine called facet. Now these clear things are the disc and the yellow things are the nerves. So when these nerves get pinched, that's true sciatica, and that's different. That's not what you're suffering from. These joints, I hope you can see this, as I press back, they kind of get pinched together, and that's what refers pain to your back and your low back. It's not the disc. If the disc hurts, the pain is constant and it's super painful. This is caused by 3 main things. So first, let's think about aging and use. So as we get older, the cartilage between our bones, so think of this as the bottom facet and this is the top, there's cartilage between that protects it and makes it smooth and glide. Well, that cartilage will get narrow and narrow, which can increase the chance of the irritation of the joint. Secondly, there's that disc in front of the joint. Now, as the disc gets loss of height, that can put more stress on those bones. Now, this can increase the likelihood, but it doesn't cause it. So that's the first part. The second part is going to be just an overuse. So someone that has a lot of bending or twisting or lifting, or very long, awkward, prolonged postures can also put excess stress on that. And at some threshold, you're going to get irritation of the joints. So that's the second reason. The third reason is going to be acute mechanical overload. So think of a classic strain sprain or some sort of like motor vehicle accident where there's a sudden impact of trauma that hyperextends your joints, causing a bunch of compression, and it's very specific. So it's very acute and it's very a single incident. The other two, it's probably this kind of gradual overuse thing, as well as all 3 of these can kind of happen together. They don't have to happen in isolation. As you get a little older, your cartilage can get a little weaker, and then maybe you stood a lot more, hyperextending, working on your ceiling, and then you get in a car wreck. Sometimes these are more perfect storms of bad events than a single incident. Now we know what caused it, let's talk about how it's going to present or what it's going to feel like. So the most common presentation is this horizontal pain right over your lumbar sacral region or just above your belt line. And it's going to be dull and achy, kind of like a bruise. It's worse first thing in the morning and then better as you move around. But with those facets, the more extension is placed on them, the more compressing, things like prolonged walking or standing is going to be more painful than sitting. And a key sign here is if you're laying on your back, if you bend your knees and put a pillow under your knees, this is highly indicative of this condition. If straightening your knees out or laying face down is more painful, that's probably lumbar facet syndrome. And these joints can refer pain down your leg. So if you look at this picture, different levels can refer pain in different areas. And unfortunately, a lot of us are taught that if it's pain in the back of the leg, it's sciatica. The true sciatica is actually pretty rare. About 5 to 10% of all patients with back pain have true sciatica. So think 1 in 10, if you have buttocks or leg pain, is going to be the disc and nerve, and 9 out of 10 is going to be this facet. With true sciatica, the pain is incredibly, incredibly intense. It's unrelenting, and no matter what position or movement you do, the pain is constant. There's going to be this burning feeling in your buttocks. Your leg pain should be worse than your back pain, and the leg pain should go past your knee. Also, this hate stretching. If you stretch your hamstring and your pain gets worse, that's likely that it's sciatica, and there may be this loss of reflex, muscle weakness, or numbness associated with your pain. Sleeping can be problematic with this condition, so here's some helpful strategies that you can implement. Again, those joints don't like extension. So laying face down or laying on your back with your knees straight is probably going to be uncomfortable. 2 good things you can do is laying on your back, bend your knees and put a pillow between your knees to support it and take some pressure off your low back and kind of get those facets to gap a little bit. Also, you can lay on your side, bring your knees as high up as possible, and then put a pillow between those knees, which will take pressure off your back and make your sleeping more comfortable. With posture, this is going to be a little counterintuitive. So with people with this condition, if I show them this picture of 3 different postures, they almost always say they feel like they're in the posture in the red box. But when I examine them and show them in the mirror, it's likely that they're in the green box. They're hyperextended. And we know the more extension you do, the more pressure you put on those facets, as I show you with the model here. So if you're constantly standing all day long, compressing those joints, nothing you really do is going to help because they're constantly getting irritated. Think of your finger as your spine. If you're constantly holding it back all the time, no stretch or exercise is going to help because it's constantly irritated. So changing your posture is super important to have good neutral posture. Now, what's neutral posture? The best way to do that is when you're standing, your weight should be on your midfoot, not your toes or your heels. And a good drill to do that is stand against the wall with your buttocks and mid-back against the wall. Maybe your heels are an inch or 2 away from the wall. And again, this is going to be a good drill to get your neutral posture. I recommend doing this a lot of times for a few days until it becomes second nature. And then when you're standing, you're going to feel your weights on your midfoot. That generalized pain over your horizontal area of your back is going to be gone, and it'll feel like your skeleton's holding you up, not your muscles. With stretches, you want to do forward bending ones that gap the facet, not backward bending. So no prone cobras, no good mornings. The first one's going to require an exercise ball. And we're going to lay over it and let our back relax. And we're going to roll forward and back as far as we can. And you want to think about gapping those facets and really relaxing your low back muscles and joints. Another good option is a seated knee bend. So on a bench or a couch or something, we're going to pull one leg up and kind of crouch down. Now, 3 things to think about is really think about your low back relaxing. We're opening up those facets. This is dynamic movement. This is not intense. So there's no exertion. You should never be grimacing, and it really shouldn't cause pain. And then lastly, don't hold your breath. This should not be painful. We're trying to create motion and get those facets to be healthier. The next one's going to be the seated arm slide. So on that same bench or couch, we're going to have our forearms on our legs, and we're going to slide out as far as comfortable, pause, and then return to the starting position. Now this may feel a little tightness in your back, but again, the muscles are not causing your pain, the facets. So if it feels a little uncomfortable, but it's only there in the moment and it's more on the outside of the muscles, not the midline of the spine, it's fine. And another good strategy is don't go all the way the first time. Go a little far, stop when it feels uncomfortable, reset, and then try to go a little farther the next time. And again, don't hold your breath and think about relaxing your back. Using that exercise ball, we're going to place it against our stomach with our arms straight, kind of like knife hands, and I want you to gently press down into the ball. While you're doing that, you're going to bend forward as far as you can, pause, and then return to the starting position. Again, think of your spine as opening up as you bend. Mild pressure down, try to go a little farther each time, but when you come back, think it's both your hip and your back, not just your back. Your back shouldn't arch, but the muscles should be recruited. So bend down as far as you can, and then use hips and back to come back up. Then lastly, a standing version. So having one hand against the wall to brace and one hand on your pelvis, bring your knee up as high as you can, slightly crouch, return to the starting position, and then lift the other leg up. And when you do this, think about your low back spreading out. So lift up, don't hold your breath, go as far as comfortable, and then lift the other leg. As you get more comfortable with this, try to lift your leg as high as you can without pinching your hip in the front. The first level 1 exercise for this is just a bridge hold. But one thing I want you to make sure that you do is you flatten your back down against the floor. So think if you put your hand under your low back, you're pressing your back into your hand and then lifting up with your glutes and holding to tolerance. Make sure your tension is in your buttocks and your legs, not your back. And really think about keeping your back flat. Don't hyper engage your core because that's going to recruit more back. Hold until you can't do it anymore. Return to the starting position. Rest for a little bit, maybe 30 seconds. Again, press your back flat, lifting up with your hips and glutes, and then hold the tolerance. Keep working up until you can hold for 60 seconds. The second one is a knee plank. So with our knees stacked and our elbow under our shoulder, we're going to come up into a plank position. You want to think about this line and this line is horizontal, and most attention should be in your right lower quadrant if you're on your right side, and less tension in those back. Don't hyperextend your back. Think about keeping that posterior pelvic tilt a little bit and tension on your side. Again, hold the tolerance, work up to holding to 60 seconds. Next is the crunch, but two things to be aware of. You should feel tension in your abs in the front of your stomach and not your neck. So put your hands behind your neck and make sure you're pulling here, not lifting with your neck. If you feel tension here, you gotta go less range of motion and more here. And then the second thing is we're trying to flatten our back out or take tension off the facets. Now, some people are gonna tell you to keep your back arched, and that may be true for other conditions, but not this. It's always context specific. So when you're doing that crunch, I want you to think about flattening out your back or pressing into your hand if your back was pressing into your hand. So hands behind your neck, press your back flat, crunch up just a little bit, pause, and then return to the starting position. When I do this, I feel no tension in my neck or low back and just in my front core. Again, don't go super high. If you want to make it harder, just hold for longer. Lastly is the straight leg raise. So laying on your back with one knee bent, I want you to take your hand of the moving leg and put it on top of your pelvis. As you raise your leg, I want you to think your pelvis is rotating. So we're rotating our pelvis and kind of pressing our back flat against the floor, pause, and then return to the starting position. For this one, do just one side, but really work on lifting this and this, do the work. Your back should feel a nice stretch. It should actually take some pain away, pause, and then return to the starting position. Bend that leg, straighten the other one, switch your hand position, and again, lift up as high as you can. Feel your back flatten, should feel good, and then return to the starting position. For level 2, we're gonna start with the box squat. So I want you to have a bench or something to sit on. And the three things I want you to think about with the squat is weight over your midfoot, your torso and your legs should move, or your hips and shoulders should move the same, and you wanna load your hips, not protect your back. Often people pressing their arms out to counterbalance. I want you to sit back into your hips, pause, and then stand up. Make sure to feel tension in your legs and not your back. So you want to make it look like the picture on the left, not the picture on the right. Next will just be a weighted goblet squat. So with a light weight, hold in front of your chest, and again, squat down, loading your hips, weight over your midfoot, and your legs are doing your work, not your back, and you're not protecting your back. Increase the weight as you can tolerate. A full length plank. So with our knees straight, elbow under our shoulders, feet stacked, we're gonna come up, keeping our back neutral, not extended, and hold the tolerance. Again, work up to holding for 60 seconds. On your right side, you should feel pain in the lower right quadrant. On your left side, you should feel on the left side. Weighted forward bend. So in a seated position, holding a light weight in your chest, we're gonna bend forward to tolerance, and then return to neutral. Don't hyperextend. You'll know if you're hyperextending because it'll hurt. So bend forward to tolerance, return to neutral. When you're coming back, make sure you use your butt and your back muscles to do it. Start with a light weight and a limited range of motion and progress to both as you can tolerate. Weighted suitcase carry. With a light to moderate weight, we'll hold in one hand. I want you to think about keeping your torso stacked so your shoulders are stacked on your hips and don't hyperextend. And we're just gonna walk as far as you can, turn around, put the weight in the other hand, and then return to the starting position. Increase the weight and distance as you can tolerate. And again, it should be here, not here. So weight over your midfoot. We hope you found this helpful. But this condition is counterintuitive because a lot of people think, oh, my muscles are tight, I need to sit upright more. And that's not the case, as the facets are causing your pain. If you did find this video beneficial, please like it and subscribe to our channel, and then don't forget to check out our other great videos.